Yes, guys, welcome back to episode 9 of Lilywhite Lounge. I'm joined by my best and greatest co-host of all time from New York. How you doing, Gus?
I'm doing well, Kish.
How are
Can't complain.
you dealing with the
How are
international
you?
break? Is it a nice little break?
Honestly, I'm so not used to us winning before an international break. I'm missing Spurs. Usually we lose before break, and I kind of tune everything out. But this is a nice change of pace. I'm actually, kind of staying up to date with some of the numbers out there, some of the stats, trying to watch some of our games back, the highlights. I'm going to try to catch some games this weekend. I know that I'm really happy for Kudus that Ghana won. I think they need to win one more game to qualify, and it means a lot to him. So I'll definitely try to catch that game if I can find a stream. Yeah, no, I'm more involved than I usually am.
Yeah, I
How about
mean,
you?
yeah, I agree. I'm actually quite disappointed now the international break's here, but yeah, I'm happy as well. I think Ghana are going to be so exciting. They got a team full of amazing wingers. Um, and so, yeah, there are so many entertaining players. As long as you know who doesn't play, I'll be rooting for them for that World Cup. I think he is. Yeah,
Unfortunately, he is
hopefully
playing,
he'll be
but
locked up by then, but we'll see. Um,
yeah,
what
yeah,
was
yeah.
it? Yeah. So I'm just kind of I'm playing a lot of football myself. Actually, interestingly, last Sunday, do you remember Rio Griffiths, who played for Spurs Academy and then went to Lyon? He was like Spurs'
It
next
rings
big
a
thing. He
bell.
was scoring like 30 goals for the 21s in a season or something, and everyone was really disappointed. He went to Lyon to get first team football, but never really broke through. Anyway, I go to my
Hmm.
match on Sunday, and he's playing for the other team up front, and like he's obviously not at Lyon anymore. I don't know where.
Did he
Yeah, he
did he
scored. We
bag?
beat them 5-1.
Uh,
It was obviously just him
oh,
and all his mates, but like he scored a good goal to be fair. And then
that's
he got
class.
sent off 5 minutes ago. It was in a
No
London
way.
Cup game, so it was like quite a big game. Um, but he was
Mm,
good. He was good to be fair. But I was just like what the hell? Like what is going on here?
that's so
But
random.
yeah, that was interesting. Um, right, so we're gonna talk a little bit about the Leeds game, and then you've got a couple themes you want to explore. Um, let's start
Yeah.
with yeah. I mean, obviously the Leeds game was a while ago now. Um, I
Hmm.
think Kudus, obviously incredible. Xavi Simmons, incredible. I think we've probably both spoken about it enough now. But you had a little bit of a concern
Hmm.
around the goalkeeper situation, so why don't you kind of speak about that to start?
Yeah, concerned is an interesting word to use. I think that there are some worries, and we were talking before we started recording about messing kind of with Vicario's head, and I think that this is an interesting spot in the season because more errors, shot stopping errors have come up, and obviously his distribution, his long distribution has been shaky. The ball he gave away against Bodo that allowed them to score their second. The parry that went straight into Okafor's path versus Leeds, and then the kind of knuckler that he couldn't save for Brighton. So I think that we always are going to blow Vicario's errors out of proportion because his distribution isn't amazing, but in a shot stopping is usually some of the best in the world. So I don't want to cause an issue where there isn't because I think that he's not going to be a net negative for a while unless it really gets to his confidence. I think there might be some more errors, soon and recently, but I think that there's a there's a conversation around it, and we talked before we started, and you can kind of add your input that we're getting to the point in the season where you don't really want to mess with the keeper's mojo and kind of their confidence, and we got some big games coming up, so. I don't think it's something that we're going to make a decision on, but it's definitely a conversation that's going to be kind of ever
It's such
present
a
all
weird one
year.
with keepers because for any other position, you can just bring someone out and it's not like a massive statement. I think when you rotate your keeper as a manager, just the kind of noise around it becomes a massive talking point unless you do it in like the cup competitions, which I think a lot of clubs do anyway. I think goalkeeper is such a mental kind of position that these kind of decisions can make things go from bad to worse. And you don't. The worst possible position you can be in is when you're rotating your keepers, because both of them keep making mistakes. You know, United have done that, and you know that a team's in kind of disarray when that starts happening. Um, yeah, I've been concerned with him, but I also think sample size with keepers is massive. And yeah, keepers are going to have little bad patches in the season, so I'm willing to kind of see it out for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think the patches with Vicario, they come and go. We've seen it with him where he may make some errors with his feet, or just his confidence claiming balls. I think that he comes the ebb and flow with him. And right now we have really settled back four. We kind of have thrown the discussion Spence versus Destiny aside for now, knowing that our settled back four is locked in for the rest of the season if they can all stay fit. And if Vicario can kind of sort some of those shot stopping errors that he doesn't usually have at all out, then we go back to kind of where we were before. And I'm not sure that the upside of bringing Kinsky in and messing with Vicario's confidence just for distribution is necessarily needed right now. I mean, our build up is pretty elementary right now, and if we add Kinsky to the mix, not really knowing, right, like you said, his sample size, what that really tells us, can be a sketchy decision, and I don't think Frank's willing to make that bold of a decision only a few months into his tenure.
I mean, I always struggle to analyze keepers. I think, like, obviously, I think goalkeepers is such a different sport to just the rest of the team. One thing I don't really love is like using stats and data to analyze keepers. I think it's so dependent on the team, what kind of shots they're facing, how we're set up defensively. And so a lot of people I've seen defending Vicario with stats, and that for me is not useful. For me, like, a goalkeeper should fill you with confidence when you watch. And I think there's so much to be said about that. You can kind of tell when a goalkeeper is confident and dominates his box and is not making errors. I think those are the things you can just use the eye test for. But yeah, I think Kinsky, we need to see more of him, because you know how good his distribution is. And as a person who is heavily biased, I think, towards us offensively rather than defensively, I would always be like, oh, let's just put Kinsky in. I want to see us build up cleaner and better. I think an actual manager would probably be more cautious than I would be. So I can understand why he wouldn't.
Yeah, I really enjoyed you, Ben, and Seb's video on kind of the future of our squad. And
yeah, go check it out, by the way, guys, on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, definitely go check that out. It's long, but I watched it while I was eating dinner, and I really enjoyed it. There was, yeah, exactly. I really like the point that you guys made about, like what you said, stats don't really matter. You know, I think that the eye test when it comes to keepers, or the confidence level you have with a keeper going into the game, is what really matters. And right now, I have some worries about Vicario again claiming crosses with his feet, but I think that if he can prove to us over the next few games that his shot stopping is back to his best, and there aren't those little errors that he's kind of that have popped up, I think we'll be all right for the short term. And going into the holiday season with the games that are on kind of our schedule, I don't want to mess with his confidence. And we saw what that looks like with Arsenal, and it's just not something that I think Frank or the fan base is really ready for. But it's definitely, I mean, I'm glad that we have a young and up-and-coming keeper that all of us have confidence in, that we would want to see. And I think we'd be willing as a fan base to see some mistakes here and there, to kind of maybe in some lesser games, to see just how he
we might be willing to. I don't know if the wider Spurs fan base are.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that you saw it in glimpses at the end of last season. He made some really professional saves versus Villa in the cup away. I know we don't play the highest line in Europe like we used to, but he's got really good sweeping actions. I think that his long balls are much more accurate. So I mean, there's a lot of positives to Kinsky, but yeah, I'm just happy that we have someone behind Vicario that our fan base can kind of look to if we need them, right? If we need him, and with injuries and kind of just fixture congestion, it'll be
No
good to
more
have him.
Forster, thank God. Um,
Oh my
on
God.
to the next 5 games. So, well, I think let's address
Hmm.
the next 3 games. I think don't want to look too far
Hmm.
ahead yet. So we've got Villa at home,
Yeah.
which I don't know where I've generated this from, but I just hate Villa. I don't know why, but I just like I just think like the way they spend, the way they kind of act like a huge club, and I don't know, they just frustrate me. So that's a game that's massive for me, just personally. Um, then we've got Monaco, your favorite team, away, and then Everton, which is one of my favorite teams at the moment, away.
Yeah.
I love watching Everton. I don't like they're not even their style, but they've just got a few individuals that like. I love Iliman and Jai. I think
Mhm.
he's so good. I think he's playing out of position at the moment on the right side to accommodate Grealish. And Grealish is getting all the plaudits, and Grealish has been great. But I think what Njai is doing and done for the last 2.5 years, I think, or maybe 3 years, in a really poor team, just carried that team on his back, and so good to watch. Um, so yeah, that's the 3 games. How are you feeling about those altogether?
I have uh I have some confidence in those 3 games. I think that we've put together enough of a resume to make me feel confident in at least Villa at home, Monaco
9 points?
away. I think that Everton. I think we
Yeah,
win both those games. I do. I think that Villa. I'm the same way as you. Villa is like top four, top five least favorite teams in the league. I absolutely hate some of their players, as most of us all do.
yeah.
McGinn and Cash especially. I just don't really
Emi Martinez, I
enjoy
hate Emi
watching them as a
Martinez as well.
neutral either. I hate Martinez. Yeah,
Yeah, I like
I love
Costa. Yeah.
Kanza though. That's my boy. Yeah, I think we win that game. I know Villa have been looking a little better recently. I know they their start was very rough. But yeah, no, I think us being at home, we haven't been too strong at home under Frank, like kind of we were expecting. But I think that we can right the ship with that game. And Monaco away, I'm interested in because they're looking to
Yeah.
sack their coach, manager. So I I know that they haven't looked amazing, but they've been eking out results. I know Kamara's injured right now. Their new signings have been hit or miss. I think Dyer and Fati have been really good for them. Have added a lot of experience and stability. Fati stayed healthy, and I think he has like
A
five
lot of
goals in
a
six
lot of
games or
pens,
something like
but
that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of pens. And then Everton is what I'm really, that's the game that's got me a little bit scared. Obviously, we have to get through the first two, but Everton, yeah, just like you, I love watching Everton. I weirdly enough, there's a lot of Everton fans up in New York, just
Really?
across the states in general. Not
That is quite odd
weirdly,
to me.
there's been a lot of Americans that have
Yeah.
played for them. Yeah, it's very interesting. There's like a very, at least in Syracuse, there's a pretty decently small, like very
That is
passionate supporter
funny.
group here, and I just love them. They're some of my best friends, so I always look forward to that game. But terrified of
Yeah.
Everton away. It's not that we have a terrible record there, but it just gives me
Yeah, I
it
want
gives
to
me the
hone in
jit.
on a little bit what you said about the home form, because I think this is actually something that's quite interesting and sort of makes sense to me, because I think the way Frank wants to set up, he's much happier, I think, being an underdog, and this is something that I think some people have had issue with, and I've had a little bit issue with, is being reactive to the opposition and not proactive about how we can dominate games. And there's so much expectation at most top six home grounds, but I think Spurs fans at home really expect a performance, and get very quickly frustrated when it's a bit flat. And so I think that definitely has something to say about why our home form has been negative. And I think this is something that Frank has to learn very quickly, is that it's fine to be transitional in away games, but I think when you come and play at White Hart Lane, and I know this is a thing that's a bit overstated, but the ticket prices are so high, and we've spent money, and there's young, exciting players that everyone wants to see. You have to platform them correctly and put on a bit of a show. And that is something I believe in anyway, in terms of what I want to see from a Spurs team. But also, I think in general, you have to do that to get the fans on side. And so, yeah, I think that'll be massive to kind of transform that home form.
100%. And I think Flav said it on something I was watching over the weekend. You know, the product that we've produced for the last few seasons has been dire, and Spurs fans have every right to be annoyed and angry and frustrated, especially with the prices they pay. Match going fans deserve to see a product that they're proud of, and results. I think that there was a mixed bag under Ange, and that's what kind of had him afloat for so long with some of the fan base. Is just the product we were producing when we did play well was fun to watch. But I think another thing in here, and this is a little bit of like a culture thing, and maybe you can comment on this, is I think opposition players just love playing in our stadium. Like they genuinely love playing there because our product and our teams haven't been very good, but also it's a spectacle. You see it all the time when opposition players have a good game at White Hart Lane. They're always posting one of those pictures where it's up at
No, I know what you mean.
and you can see it, and it's a beautiful stadium. So and I think that it's really something that we have to kind of change is opposition players shouldn't love coming to play at our stadium. Maybe it's a talking point when we're trying to sign them, but like it shouldn't be something that they look forward
and that's
to.
something you have to create.
It should
You
be
have to
more of a
create
hostile
that. I mean,
environment.
that comes from momentum. It comes from form. It comes from good performances.
Yeah.
It comes from players and collective spirit. Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's so many factors that go into that, and a lot of it is just about not being a good team for the last few years. And so I think hopefully the better the team gets, the better the players get in terms of signings and development. You just create a winning atmosphere there, and players get used to losing there, and that kind of slowly disappears. I also think that the stadiums will slowly even out a little bit, and that won't be that rare to have a stadium that looks like that. My laptop's just gonna die. I'm just gonna quickly put it on charge. Give me a sec.
Okay. I'll try to fill the space here. I think that's something that's interesting about the modern game now is, especially with Everton Stadium opening. It should be interesting to see, because they were a tough side to play at Goodison. Just even when they had some really bad teams, I just think, at least in the games that I watched, they seemed to turn up in a way that was hostile, hard to play through. Energy, even when they had really gash teams. So I'm interested to see how Frank can turn that momentum. I think that you're right, that we have to play more on the front foot. We have to be more ambitious when it comes to starting lineups. Bringing in kind of our young players will help, I think, with fan engagement and just the optimism and the ambition that the fans see on the pitch. I think will translate to a better environment. And those young players, I think, in my opinion, just play harder and play with more energy. So, in games, I think even versus Villa, if we can, start one of our young midfielders in the pivot with Paulinho, or, be even more ambitious and go for a more, more fun, flary, Bergval, Gray, Bergval, Sarr pivot. I think that gets the fans excited anyways. So yeah, I'm interested to see how Frank kind of changes his mentality at home, because the recent performances haven't been something to write home about. So yeah, we'll see.
Nice one. So there's one player on loan that I think we just have to speak about, because some of the levels that Vuskovic is putting up out on loan are absolutely insane. I saw a graph today where it was ranked, I think, progressive passes on one axis and aerial duels one on the other axis, and it was ranked against all centre backs in top five leagues. And Vuskovic was genuinely on the complete top end, like miles and miles from any other centre back. What he's doing at 18 is not normal. I think people need to understand that. Like 18 years old and he's dominant. Probably, this is not even an overstatement, top five aerial dual winners centre backs wise in the world, and he's just 18. And all the other stuff is obviously going to develop even further. He is one of the best signings we've made in a long time, and I think it will only be so long before we have to start thinking about how we accommodate him into this side, especially with the game going so much more towards set pieces at the moment. I think you gain minimum 9, 12, 15 points from just having him in your team. Like that's not even going into his ability on the ball where he can spray passes off both feet. Just an absolute crazy talent, and one that I think Spurs fans should be so excited about. And I think centre backs don't tend to necessarily be the most exciting players, but this is one that stands out. Like he scores goals, he's so good on the ball, he's dominant. You'll notice him as soon as he starts playing, and he'll be a real fun player to watch for Spurs.
I'm so center back pilled. Like we've been, until we had Mickey, we had been so desperate for a partner for Romero that I spent like almost 2 seasons just watching center backs. Like I loved Tapsoba. I loved when we recruited Mickey. I had known about him, but I hadn't watched him, and when I watched him, I was kind of blown away by the pace and just the quickness and some of the decision making he has. But watching Vuskovic at 16, 17 at Westerlo, fortunately for in the States, Westerlo was on ESPN Plus, so I watched like so many of his games, and I didn't catch too many at Split, but last season he was arguably one of the best center backs to watch, just entertainment wise, which is rare to say with a center back. Usually they go unnoticed when they're having good performances. He's just entertainment, and I can't wait to continue to watch him in the Bundesliga. I think that was such a good, smart decision from us. He's comfortable there. Did his brother used to play there, or is he playing there now?
There's some dodgy stuff, like his brother got done for doping or something, but I think his brother did used to play there.
Yeah.
I think this loan makes
That's
so
so
much
funny,
sense
by
as
the way.
well, because I love Vuskovic in a back three, in the center of a back three, because both footedness, aerial dominance, those two things in the center of a back three are like perfect, because you want your best header in the center of the pitch at all times, because that's how the most amount of aerial balls are going to come down the center. So he can kind of eat those up for fun. And then when he's playing out, he can play out to his right, he can play out to his left, because he's so both footed. I think that loan just made so much. And I think the other thing is that Hamburg are a bit of a relegation candidate, so they're likely to sit a bit deeper than the average Bundesliga side, which his one issue, as we've known, is his kind of pace on the turn. Although I think that's overstated a little bit. I think he's actually not too bad when he gets in his stride. I think for me, it's more like he's a little bit clunky on the turn. I'm thinking like a bit Harry Maguire-esque, not in terms of the rest of his attributes, but I think in terms of on the turn, because Harry Maguire is actually quite quick when he gets in his stride, but it's more about the quickness of the turn. So yeah, I think that loan just made so much sense.
I think that's an incredible comp, to be honest, for just that area of his athleticism. And yeah, I think that when you have a center back that's kind of world renowned as a world class talent, and he has so many strengths, right? You're looking for a weakness. You're looking for the reason why he might struggle initially in the Premier League, and I think that's always going to be something that you do at any position with a prospect. And with him, it's just a little bit more glaring because he has so many positives and so many strengths. I've noticed that too. I think that isn't very harsh on him just because he's such a big frame. He can be a little clunky on that turn. The one thing I wanted to mention with him is that some of the replies and some of the comments from Hamburg fans and people that just are obviously Bundesliga fans have been saying that, he's turned that back line and that defense from easily relegation fodder, like leaking 70 plus goals a year, to, potentially, battling for 15th, 14th, 13th. And that in itself should tell you that he is as close to ready as you can get for an 18-year-old center back. And I would love to hear your input on just how we're going to integrate him. I know that in the video with you, Seb and Ben, it was kind of an interesting one where we may need to put Mickey at left back, but at the same time, as much as we love Mickey, it may be a moment where we kind of rotate Mickey more regularly, and it's Vuskovic, Romero, and that, I mean, for progression, carrying and being able to break lines with both feet. He's got the Romero gene where he has really, really good touch, lofted balls, little dinked balls, short ones. I'm just really excited for that potential kind of back line, and maybe we throw Mickey at left back. Who knows?
With Vuskovic, I think the games where he'd be so effective are the games where teams sit off us, because I think he's not going to be as effective when he's pressed as someone like Romero. But I think when you give him that extra second of time, because he's a bigger figure, and he's more built than Romero, like bigger, it's a bit more difficult for him to sort out his feet under pressure. But I think if you give him any extra second on the ball, then he can use that technique, because his ball striking is so good. He's so clean in the way he strikes it. So I think those kind of games is where I'd really like to see him. I think in games where we're going to play a bit more of a transitional game, a bit more of like we're going to be on the back foot more, then you want to have. I mean, it's different because you could have Vuskovic if you're sitting deeper to kind of win aerial balls, but then Van der Ven if we're playing against a really quick striker or whatever. I think it's one of those where you rotate heavily. Van der Ven, I want to see him have more minutes at left back. I wanted to see that this season. I think it's one where we are going to have a conversation about how we include him, and that's not even to get started on Janai Byfield, who is another insane centre-back talent, which we can talk about in another episode. But there's a lot of, and Kota Takai is obviously an unknown quantity at the moment, but super talented as well. So it's a bit overkill at the moment, a centre-back. But maybe they're figuring out a way to kind of build in that three-back with a one proper full-back and one more tucked-in centre-back, like so many of the top teams do nowadays. So that's certainly an option. Just to end on Vuskovic, their manager tonight in his interview said Spurs have our centre-back for the next 10 to 15 years. So that's obviously high praise. And Vuskovic, don't know if this is his first call-up or maybe second call-up, but he's well involved with the national team now, which at 18 is not to be sniffed at. All right, we've got a few questions before we wrap up. I've bookmarked a few. We obviously answered Pay 12,000's question, which was about the goalkeeper situation. So I hope you enjoyed our conversation on that. We've got. I love this account. I don't know who this guy is, but he has some very good takes. He's called a Young Pint Lover, and his picture is a pint of Guinness.
Lovely name.
He said, how important is it to have a settled midfield, as in 1 to 2 players who start every week in the same midfield position / role? Feels like Spurs haven't had that in years. You take it away.
I love that question. I think it's pretty important. We have a dilemma in midfield with Bentancur's extension and the possibility of Paulinho becoming permanent, and having 3 kind of emerging, highly rated prospects, and you could call them prospects, you can call them talents, but they're all senior players. They've all played plenty of minutes to kind of give managers and fans confidence that they may make some mistakes. They may have some weaknesses in certain areas that those 2 guys, Bentancur and Paulinho, may not have weaknesses in those areas, but we at some point I think we need to take a little bit of a leap of faith and establish our pivot in certain game states against certain opponents. I think in big games we have established that it's going to be Bentancur and Paulinho. Maybe tough away venues will opt for that. We saw that at Leeds. Maybe not the fondest, most exciting pivot versus Leeds, but they added some stability. Paulinho's an absolute beast when it comes to just mopping things up. So maybe in lesser games against kind of worse teams, we play Paulinho, Bergvall. We all want to see Bergvall deeper. I think that Xavi in the 10 is unquestionably the way we need to go moving forward, and there really should be no debate about that. The pivot needs to be kind of established for in my opinion, for just two different types of games. One where we are a little bit nervous that either the venue or the place that we're going is going to be tougher, or the opponent is tougher, and then in games where we're going to be sat off on and we have more space to operate in. That's kind of my take. I think it's pretty important.
This is a very good question, and I think actually this is where I come back to technical flaw. I think with the players we have who struggle to necessarily knit things together and connect the back four to the more attacking players, I think that's where kind of familiarity and kind of chemistry and understanding different players' games can really kind of boost them a little bit and help them kind of cover a few of those deficiencies. I think when you have players of a certain technical level, they just play and they just find it easy regardless of who their teammates are. I think there's certain players, like, I don't know why this player comes to my mind so much, but I think Paqueta is a good example of this. Like, he's of such a good technical level. West Ham have been such a mess constantly. He's played in so many different positions, and I know he hasn't always been like amazing, but when I see him play, I'm just like, yeah, he just plays, and he's just good, and like he can do things with the ball at his feet, regardless who he's playing with, regardless who he's playing against. He can get out of pressure. He can break lines with passing. That is such a random example, but that was the first one that came to my mind. I think those sorts of players their technical ability just carries them, and so I think where we're at is we lack that kind of technical level in midfield, and I think if we had more of those types of players, then we'd be all right in terms of rotating a bit more.
Agreed. I think that some of the rotations that we are going to make with Bentancur, kind of playing the whole game, but getting subbed off when we're trying to protect a 1 or 2 goal lead. I think that you don't see very much drop off, right? Defensively in duels, you can see Sarr's dueling numbers. You know that he is a better carrier than Bentancur. You know that he combines in tight spaces better than Bentancur. And so I think that the Paqueta example is an interesting one because he was playing 10. There's no doubt that he has Bowen, he had Kudus for 2 seasons, but he's also playing with like Stoichek and Ward-Prowse. Like, those aren't technical players in that sense, right? And so when you have a technically gifted player, they kind of pop up in the right areas. They always are going to combine well, even with players that don't have the ability to do what he can do. So you're right. You put a Bergvall back there or a Gray back there, and just having an established maybe 10 and 6 is important. And then we have that with Xavi and Paulinho, and maybe it's just figuring out who fits that mold the best. And in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, it's one of those 3 young guns, and it's not Bentancur, which is making that extension a little bit more head scratching. My one take on that is he always plays really good for Uruguay.
Value.
So maybe World Cup,
Yeah.
a little World Cup stock boost. Who knows?
Speaking of the World Cup, we've got a question from Andreas Saris, who asks specifically you about how you feel about the World Cup, obviously it being in your country. And and if you plan to go to any of the games. I'm actually potentially also coming out for the World Cup, so you obviously know more about it, but you go ahead.
I'm looking forward to the World Cup. Obviously, I think that it's a big deal that we got it. I could talk about my country for hours, for multiple reasons, but I just think in terms of football, I think it's just an exciting time to be an American football fan. We're pumping money into the USMNT. It's not that it's really reflected on the pitch currently, but the stadiums that they have it in are in really good spots, and I think the people that are going to come overseas are really going to enjoy those cities. I will say that obviously a lot of people have some fears over gun violence and guns in this country, that are coming from countries that have no access to guns, and I would wish and hope that our country kind of can host a safe environment for everyone, and I'm sure it will. So those cities, I hope people can enjoy. I live in central New York, so I'm kind of like 5 hours in between three of the main host cities: Toronto, Philly, and New York City. So me and my friends are definitely going to go to one or two games. We're not sure if we're getting tickets just yet, just because of the prices, and kind of the queues signing up. We haven't gotten reached out for those tickets, but we're definitely going to go. I think that that's the American attitude, is like, you just go to the city and maybe you scalp some tickets, maybe you just hang around the stadium and tailgate and kind of drink and go to bars and meet internationals that are coming in for these games, and we might.
I'm hoping to like snag some kind of ticket from someone, or by then maybe I'll have some kind of commercial, someone asking me to go to the game to film content or something like that.
That'd be
I've got family over there in New Jersey, New York, and Toronto, so free accommodation, just flights. But yeah, I think it's massively. World Cup's always just great, isn't it? So exciting, and those cities are great. I mean, it's a bit spread out, which is a bit annoying.
Oh
yeah.
Let me talk about that for a second. So it takes a week to drive nonstop from New York City to LA. So I think people need to understand that, first of all, public transportation is terrible. You cannot rely on public transport. So you may need to rent a car. No, not may. You will need to rent a car, especially if you're getting an Airbnb like outside the city where you're staying or where the game is. And then if you're traveling from one stadium to another, like in a different city, you're going to need to take a flight, or you're going to need to prepare for like a 12 to 15 hour drive. And I think that is a little bit daunting for people, and just having some reality to this, adding some reality to the situation. I think that's important, because I think some people think that maybe like San Francisco to LA is an easy drive, or from, let's say, Miami to DC is an easy drive. It's not. It's easy in the sense of you can drive it and there's highways, but it's not a time sensitive drive at all. So playing around that.
Yeah, because they're the place I haven't been in America. Like, this is it's funny because this World Cup, obviously, when did we find out that this was going to be in America? Because it must have been years and years.
I think it was about 2 years ago.
It was because I remember, I don't know if it was rumored, but while I was at school, we were talking about, when we're 26, we're going to go to the 2026 World Cup in America. Like, that's going to be such a good trip. Like, we're all going to go. Like, we're all talking, like 15 of us were going to go. And obviously now it's a year away, and we all kind of.
Yeah, it was announced in 2017.
We all kind of thought, yeah, by then we'll have so much money, like we'll be rich. Like, not rich, but we were like, we'll have more than enough. We'll get cars and whatever. And now it's here, and we're just probably in the exact same position as. So yeah, hopefully I can get some way of going. But even if it's just to be around it, I want to be around there.
I think what I was confusing is when the venues got announced, because that was recently. Because me and my friends have been talking about this for years. So yeah, it was just like, we need to know the venues. We need to know like what trips we're going to plan, when the games are going to be. And I think that dropped
It's
like
so funny
around
because
2 years ago, right
this
around the
conversation would
last
come
World Cup.
around like once a year or more probably at like parties, and then you speak to like another group
Yeah,
of boys, and they'd be like, yeah, 2026 World Cup are going. We're definitely going. When we were like 18, and obviously thinking like, yeah, we probably have to take a year out of like work and like let our girlfriends look after the kids and stuff. And meanwhile, we're still just kids ourselves.
yeah. Meanwhile, we're all
um,
childless still.
yeah, I'm excited for the World Cup. To be fair,
Yeah, when I figure out cities and stuff, I'll try to let people know where I'm going to be at because I definitely want to meet up with people that are going to be around
and
me. If I'm
we can
in
do a
at one of the
Lilywhite
games in the
Lounge
city,
live
we can
show.
figure it out. Hell yeah.
Um, okay, to finish this kind of leads us on nicely to how we normally end the podcast. This is from Tuscan. He had two parts to the question. The first part was, do you think Gattuso will do better than Spalletti for the Italian national team? And I don't think I'm in a place to really answer this because I don't know enough about the Italian team, although I know it's had a major fall off, obviously, compared to the likes of Del
I,
Piero, Totti, and those guys. Um,
right. I'd hope for
yeah,
Destiny's
I mean,
sake.
I've not heard the best things
I think
about
just they're
Gattuso
better.
in terms of well, character and
Yeah.
management. So
Yeah.
yeah, I also think those kind of figures never really work well in international tournaments because they're so high pressure and fallouts can be massive. Um, One thing I did
Hmm.
quickly forget to discuss was the cash injection. Um, I mean, I
Oh,
haven't
right.
thought too much about this. I think 100 million's been injected from ENIC. Um, yeah, I don't know what don't know what that will look like
Yeah.
in terms of transfers, or will we see? I remember when we got that supposed 250 million war chest or something, and nothing happened.
Oh my God.
So
The war
nothing happened,
chest.
and then we sold Kane a year later. So I mean, I take these things with a pinch of salt. I think 100 million people were saying isn't enough. I think for a single cash injection of 100 million, that's a lot. Transfers don't tend to
Mhm.
work like so directly. I think having 100 million in the club for operations means that you can spend more because they also split up payments year by year. I know they do the PSR thing year by year and all that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but
Mhm.
I know 100 million injecting
Yeah,
is a
that
lot.
yeah, that was doing my head in this morning when I saw so many people be like, "Oh my God, that's
It's
Semenya,"
not a
but
list.
who
Doesn't
else
work
can we
like
buy with that
that.
money? It's like it's not like that. That's the money that we're gonna have for the first installments of
Exactly.
all our purchases. Um, and I think that anytime we get a cash injection, quote unquote, war chest, I have to be that meme that's like nothing ever happens. I would be pointing at a whiteboard right now. Nothing ever happens. We'll see. I'm optimistic, but it seems to always come out around this time that we have this amount of money for January in the next two windows, and it'll be interesting. I don't think we're gonna make a big
No
purchase
one
in
does though.
January,
No
but
one buys big in January. So I just think, yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Besides City
yeah,
last year,
weird,
which
but weird
was
signings
strange,
like future
very
signings, but
strange.
for 60 million and stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, cool. Let's move on to the last thing. I think this is a nice way to end it. Well, not necessarily a nice way, but Tuscan says, "What's the most uncomfortable piece of media that you think people should watch?" He gave some examples, none of which I've heard of. I have one for this, where
I have a
if
good
you
one
have a
for
little
this.
thing.
Oh, we both do. Shout out
Is that
Tuscan, by
someone
the
you
way.
know?
Love Tuscan. Yeah, well, he's
Nice.
just a mutual I've had for a while.
Um, yeah.
Um,
So my one is actually quite relevant now. I think is When They
mhm.
See Us on Netflix, um, which is the story about the Central Park Five. Um, that is
Oh
probably
yeah.
the most upsetting series I've ever watched in my life. It's about a rape that takes place in Central Park in New York, and the police don't know who did it, and they're under a lot of pressure to find who did it, and they find these boys who are just messing around in the park, all of which are kids, I think 13, 14-year-old kids. I think one of them's 16, and basically just pins it all on these five boys who have done absolutely nothing wrong. and they end up going to prison for years and years and years. I think Trump called for them to be murdered. Um, and turns out it was someone completely different, obviously. And these kids basically lost half of their lives. Um, One of the kids did really badly because he was tried as an adult because he was 16. So he went to adult jail and obviously was treated horribly and I think really messed up his mental health and stuff. And they're all now campaigners for, I don't know what they actually campaign for. I assume it's like
Probably racial injustice.
anti-racism and stuff like that. But that series was so hard to watch, but I think so important to watch to understand the kind of stories that go on. Not just in America, to be fair,
We
they
see
happen
it.
here as well.
It's still happening. I mean, it still happens in America all the time. Racial injustice is a huge issue. A lot of people probably don't know in the UK something recent happened that's not exactly what happened for the Central Park Five, but Kyron Lacey, the LSU wide receiver who got pinned a reckless endangerment and manslaughter charges on a woman in a car accident. He wasn't even involved, and he ended up taking his own life because of it, because the media portrayed him as this psychopathic, entitled athlete who was street racing, and it turns out he was 80 meters behind the accident and drove past it slowly. And yeah, he ended up taking his life a year later. So this is still a thing. I've been meaning to watch that. I've watched a lot of media in the Central Park Five, mostly because of Trump's very famous, full page ad that he took out advocating for them to be
They were children as
murdered,
well.
killed.
They were
Um,
13, 14. They had
oh
no
yeah,
idea. I think
very
even
very
in the
young.
series, half of them say that they didn't even know what sex was. Like they didn't even know what rape was. So the whole thing is just heartbreaking. What
Heartbreaking,
do you have
heartbreaking.
anything? Doesn't have to be. It can be uncomfortable
Yes,
in many ways.
I have a movie that a lot of people probably have seen that are older than us. It's called
I
Requiem of a
have
Dream.
started that. I haven't
It's a
watched it
very
fully through.
yeah, it's a very famous movie from the very early 2000s. It's one of Jared Leto's best movies. It's about four individuals. They're all addicted to drugs and how their lives intertwine and then eventually fall apart. And it's just It's just gut wrenching and heartbreaking, and it just shows you the impact of drugs in people's lives. And there's some very gory scenes. There's some very heartbreaking moments. And at the start of the movie, their lives aren't put together, right? They're all addicted to drugs, but they're somewhat put together. And by the end, they're all in different locations. They're all from a very small neighborhood. I think it's Coney Island or Staten Island. They're all from a small neighborhood. And by the end of the movie, they're all spread out across the country in different areas, all addicted to different drugs and affecting their life in different ways. And it's it sticks with me. I've seen it twice. Um, when you watch it, you'll instantly recognize the soundtrack. Requiem of a Dream is also a song that you may hear on like every YouTube highlight competition. I would hum it or sing it, but I don't want to butcher it. You know exactly what I mean once you listen to it. It's on like every like highlight, or like it's played in the background of every like dramatic comeback, like the best
Yeah,
dramatic
yeah, yeah, yeah.
comebacks in sports history. And that in itself gets you like into the movie because you understand that this is really kind of heartbreaking, gut wrenching stuff. And they do not, skip any scenes that would be too gory for film. So it's that is the most heartbreaking media that I've watched recently. There's a lot of media out there about, genocides and wars and, injustices that we were just talking about that you could deem as much more devastating for sure. But just in terms of like visually watching that and feeling it, it's
That's one. Yeah,
second
that's
to
been
none in
one of
my
those that's
opinion.
been
That
on my
that
watch list for so long. But I know that some people have told me how horrible it is that I've just like put off. And I actually don't mind watching stuff like that.
yeah,
But it's been one of those
me
I've put
neither.
off for ages. But I will definitely watch that. Um, But yeah, I think that's a good way to end.
Hmm.
We are obviously recording on a Thursday today, as it's the international break. But going forward, we will be recording earlier in the week so we can get this podcast out quicker, for to react to matches and potentially Champions League games as well. We've also got
Hmm.
a little new addition we're going to be adding to the podcast where we're going to have some Spurs Academy expert speaking kind of during the episode on academy updates, players, teams, what's going on with the different age groups. I think that'll be really insightful and a nice way to kind of constantly keep up to date with what's going on with our youth teams. And so yeah, there's plenty to be excited for. Finally, we're recording after a win, even though it feels like days and days ago. But hopefully
Yeah,
we'll have more positives to discuss going forward. But Gus, thanks so much as ever coming on.
it's a blast.
And come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.